In this video, we do a review of fraction multiplication and division. And to multiply and divide fractions, here's the good news. You don't have to have common denominator. So if you look at the first example, we have 3/7 times 3/10. And multiplying fractions, you can multiply straight across. Numerators with numerators, denominators with denominators. In 3/7, the number that's in the top of the fraction, that's called the numerator. And the number that's in the bottom of the fraction, the 7, that's called the denominator. And when you go to multiply fractions together, you multiply numerators across and denominators. So in this particular problem, it would be 3 times 3, 9, over 7 times 10, 70. Now, one of the things you want to do is make sure that you check to see if your fraction can be reduced further. And that means, are there any numbers that divide evenly into both 9 and 70? And there aren't. So this 9/70, that would be your final answer for problem number 1. Okay, in problem number 2, we have two fractions, 11/6, 11/6 times negative 14/33. And first of all, let's talk about the sign. Again, we're going to remember that when we multiply together a positive number times a negative number, a positive multiplied times a negative, your answer is going to be negative. Okay, so this answer is going to be a negative number. And we could multiply straight across. 11 times negative 14, which would be a negative 154. And then we can multiply the 16 times the 33, which is 528. And then we would need to reduce this fraction further by finding common factors. Okay, those numbers are getting a little big. So let me show you instead a different method. Rather than multiplying straight across like we did here, let's look at 11 and the 33. And 11 and 33 have 11 in common. They have a common factor. So we can divide 11 by 11, which would leave us a 1, and 11 into the 33, which would leave us a 3. So now we've reduced that fraction before we multiply, and our numbers are smaller. Take a look at the 16 and the negative 14. They have a factor in common. 2 goes into both, right? They're both even. So let's go ahead and divide 2 into 16, which gives us 8, and 2 into negative 14, which gives us a negative 7. So now our problem looks like this. 1/8, that's what's left from reducing the fraction on the left, times negative 7/3. That's what left when we reduced before. And now we can go ahead and multiply straight across, and we get negative 7 over 24, which is what we would have gotten here as well. But see, these numbers are bigger. Okay, let's look at 3. See if we can use the same idea. So now here we have negative 15/7 times negative 14/27. You notice we're multiplying a negative times a negative, and that means that our answer will be positive. Okay? And let's look at some common factors. Well, 7 and negative 14 have a factor of 7 in common. So 7 goes into itself once, and 7 goes into negative 14 negative 2 times. So we're going to reduce those. The negative 15 and the 27, they have a 3 in common factor. That's their common factor. So 3 divides into negative 15 negative 5 times, and 3 divides into 27 9 times. So now this is what's left. We have a negative 5 over 1 times a negative 2 9ths. And we're going to multiply straight across, and that's going to give us 10 9ths. Now that's called an improper fraction when you have the numerator bigger than the denominator. The 10 is larger than the 9. And so oftentimes you want to read the directions in your problems to see if they want you to leave your answer as an improper fraction or change to a mixed number. So if they want you to change to a mixed number, let me review that for you. We're going to just divide. We'll divide the 9 into the 10. So 9 goes into 10 one time with a remainder of 1, and you're going to use that remainder to make a fraction and put it over this 9. So 10 nines, or 1 1/9, is the answer for problem number 3. Now we're going to look at fraction division. And fraction division is a lot like fraction multiplication, but it has one added step. And that is that we're going to multiply. We're going to change the division problem to a multiplication problem. But we're going to multiply by the reciprocal of the second fraction. So the reciprocal of a fraction is the fraction you get when you switch or flip the fraction, right? And so I've had some students in the past tell me that they remember how to divide fractions by doing something they called keep, change, and then flip. So let me show you how that works with our first example. So we have 3/8 divided by 7/9. We're going to keep the first fraction the way it is. We're going to change the division symbol to a multiplication, and we're going to flip the 7/9 to 9/7, which is the reciprocal of 7/9. Okay? So we get the reciprocal by flipping the second fraction. Okay, and now we're going to go ahead and multiply straight across, see if anything reduces. And I'm not seeing anything. The 3 doesn't reduce with the 7 or the 8, and the 9 doesn't reduce with the 8 or the 7. So we can multiply straight across and go 3 times 9 is 27 over 8 times 7, which is 56. Let's look at the second problem. Now we're dividing two negative numbers together. So a negative divided by a negative is just like when you multiply together two negatives, your answer will be positive. So negative divided by a negative is a positive, right? So again, we're going to do keep, change, and flip. We're going to keep the first fraction, the negative 10/21. We're going to change the division symbol to a multiplication, and we're going to flip to the reciprocal, negative 28 over 25. Okay, now let's look for common factors. So the 10 and the 25 have a 5 in common. So 5 goes into negative 10 negative 2 times. 5 goes into 25 5 times. The 21 and the 28 have a 7 in common. That's a common factor. So 7 divides into 21 3 times. 7 divides into negative 28 negative 4 times. Okay, so here's what we have so far, right? This is what we have. We have negative 2/3 times negative 4/5, and we're going to multiply straight across. Negative 2 times negative 4 is a positive 8. 3 times 5 is 15. In our final problem, we've got negative 9/4 divided by a whole number, 45. And what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to put a 1 under that to make it into a fraction. So when you have a whole number or an integer, number that isn't a fraction, not written as a fraction, make it a fraction by putting this 1 in the denominator. Okay, now we're going to get ready to keep, change, and flip. Okay, and remember this keep, change, flip, you only do that when you're dividing fractions. That's the only time. Okay, so change to a multiplication, and the reciprocal is 1 over 45. Okay, so now common factors. Yes, that 9 and the 45 is right. So 9 goes into negative 9, negative 1. 9 goes into 45 5 times. And so we multiply straight across. So negative 1 times 1, which is negative 1, over 4 times 5, which is 20.